The state is moving at a rapid pace in its case against Lori Vallow Daybell. Nearly 20 witnesses have testified in the Doomsday murder trial. Today, the medical examiner detailed the homicide of Lori's fourth husband, Charles, through his autopsy, showing how the second gunshot fired by Alex Cox finished Charles as he laid flat on his back. A witness with Banner Life Insurance discussing the awkward phone call in which Lori learned she wasn't getting $1 million a week after Charles's death. I'm Justin Lum, and we are on the record. Day 5 of the Lori Vallow Daybell trial just wrapped up. Fox 10 Investigator Justin Lum here with Special Projects EP George Obie. We had 5 witnesses on the stand today. We're not done with the last witness, Cassanda Ynclan, number 17, and we're going to get to her testimony in just a moment. But the state is saying they could be done with their case in chief by Thursday, and here we are just last Monday, a week ago, doing opening statements. Are we surprised at this?
I don't know that we're surprised. As we've seen the case go along, we learned obviously a lot by the end of last week how this was going to play out. But clearly the prosecution has a game plan. They're sticking to it. And we're not seeing a lot of cross-examination from Lori.
Not a lot of objections,
Nope.
like you've been saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, usually that would chew up some time. So sidebars. I feel like there haven't been that many sidebars. This has been smooth. It's just like, Trina Cage just moving forward every play at a time.
Well, again, you feel like she's on cruise control. She's obviously dealing with someone who isn't familiar with how to defend themselves in a major case like this. So she's, I wouldn't say getting away with certain things, but she's keeping the flow moving. Maybe that'll help the jury.
She doesn't have to go up against a seasoned public defender or criminal defense attorney. And she does make sure to redirect every time Lori does so choose to cross-exam. She's right back up there making sure that things are clarified with the witness. So before Ynclan, we had Jeff Moberg with Arizona DPS, really ballistics, firearms expert, very dry technical stuff. Then before that, Robin Smith Scott with Banner Life Insurance, critical. Huge, not a long testimony, but we heard the phone call that people have been talking about and that we've been discussing today. Lori Vallow Daybell making sure to call that life insurance company a week after to see if she can collect the $1 million, and she finds out she's not the beneficiary, and she gets real passive-aggressive on the phone, and the jury has to be able to hear that. But they don't know about what happens to J.J. Vallow.
No, but I think if you're watching this, definitely go back and listen to that phone call. There were 2 calls that were played. One that was immediately after the shooting, and then, like you said, almost a week later, where she realizes that she wants to collect, not going to be able to collect. You can, if you listen to the call, you listen to the tone of Lori's voice, very telling.
Yeah, and right then and there, she hasn't even done the Social Security benefits appointment yet. She would do that in August 12, 2019, and that brings us to Mark Sari, who's with SSA, and she tries to grill him with cross-examination, asking him if he's very sure about how she applied, and if maybe she had been misled by an SSA employee, and that he doesn't seem to be privy to all this. His job is to investigate fraud and abuse. He began doing that in January 2020, and we were looking for that door to open wide open to go back to why exactly he was investigating. Because, guys, if you don't know, she's convicted of grand theft besides first-degree murder. She continued to collect her children's Social Security benefits. She did not report that they had been deceased. She did not report that she just got married to Chad Daybell on November 5th, 2019. So there was a lot there, but she sort of steered clear from it. But she did try to imply that maybe this is an SSA issue, not her.
Right. Like this, it was their fault, not mine. But again, this interaction was not recorded, right? So where we learned the life insurance call was recorded, the SSA stuff, again, was not. She made it a point to say, none of this was being recorded. So it's really her word, which, as she didn't get into specifics, but she did try and put the blame on them and not her.
And the first witness of the day, we're going to hear from in a little bit, Dr. Derek Bumgarner. For the first time, we get to hear about that autopsy, and Bumgarner talks about Charles Vallow laying flat on his back. They go through a whole direct exam of how he was laying down and shot at with that second gunshot wound entering, and how it goes, through the abdomen, out the left shoulder. It's very, very intense direct examination because you really need to spell it out for the jury of how this worked. And so he seemed nervous at times. I don't know how often he testifies. I would think with the county's medical examiner here, but I mean, he got out all the information he could, and Lori still chose to cross-examine him as well.
He did, and we noticed this with some of the witnesses who were clearly used to testifying at court. I think the nature of this case, the amount of people that he knows are watching, definitely a little nervous to start the morning off. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's take a listen to Dr. Bumgarner talking about Charles Vallow and how he was laying on the ground.
So in this case, were both gunshot wounds front to back?
They were.
Were both gunshot wounds right to left?
Yes.
The gunshot wound to Charles's chest was slightly downward,
Correct.
and the gunshot wound to Charles's abdomen was upward.
Yes.
Doctor, given the trajectory that you observed, that from the gunshot wound to Charles's abdomen that exited his left shoulder, and the fact that the gunshot wound was shored, would that be consistent with the shooter standing somewhere near Mr. Vallow's feet and firing at Charles Vallow as he was laying on the floor?
Yes, that's certainly possible.
Now, I didn't see this coming. In cross-examination, Lori Vallow asks about toxicology report. What do you test for? I think she's been thinking about this for a while. Now, remember, guys, she has laid out this narrative that Charles had this bad relationship with Tylee. He was very angry. He was becoming threatening via text messages and other messages and intimidating. And then this fight happens, and this is self-defense. That's Lori's narrative. She asks if they can test for HGH, testosterone, and even like medication for blood pressure. Like, it's pretty obvious what she's trying to suggest.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if for those familiar with toxicology, only certain things are tested for. You would have to request to go back and test for other substances like this. But she has already laid out the narrative earlier in the trial in her opening statements that Charles was abusive. So she's, I guess, implying the correlation between what we would consider roid rage, HGH, right, human growth hormones, with Charles's demeanor and attitude on the day that he was shot.
And it's crazy to think about it like this. Now, is it clever that she did that? I don't know. You guys be the judge. But everyone you talk to about Charles, we talked to Kay Woodcock just last Friday. This guy's a lover, not a fighter. Same guy who wanted to be with Lori. He wanted to make sure the family was intact for the sake of JJ. And he was on the fence. So do I get divorced? Do I not get divorced? You know, he was definitely someone that wanted to make it work with his wife. And we find out later through this Ynclan testimony that Lori's saying she didn't even like the guy. And we'll get into that in a moment. But to suggest that he was a roid rage victim or whatnot, and that he had been physical, I don't know, does she think that she's casting doubt on the jury? And maybe one juror is like, oh, this guy could have been dangerous if they didn't test for that. And it was so.
As Taylor, his former attorney, divorce attorney, told us during the lunch break, we've already had witnesses humanize Charles. None of them have described him as an angry person or someone who has rage, right? Nobody. When we had Alex on the stand last week,
Adam,
who, you know, described Charles's demeanor the night before he was shot. Like we had Nancy Joe, who dated Charles the night before.
Yeah.
There was never any mention of him being enraged or, you know, someone who was under the influence of HGH.
Yeah.
Nobody to this point has laid that out. So I would think the jury would be like, that came out of nowhere.
There was no suggestion to say the night before he went to Lori's home to pick up JJ, he was ready to fight.
Right.
He was ready for a fight. Or he had said something to Adam to the effect of, it's on. I'm about to go over there and then he didn't even know that Alex was there at the time when he arrived that morning. So, but you see where Lori might be going with that cross-examination. She definitely went for it today. Let's talk about Detective Cassanda Ynclan with Chandler PD. We were talking about demeanor, and many people have said Lori seems to be very nonchalant on body camera video, phone calls, obviously, and then the detective interview. That she was very just unemotional and detached from the situation.
We got to set it up again. So Lori was at the house the morning of the shooting. We already know she was in the house, and she heard the shot. So now you have a detective on the stand, new to the scene, describing what Lori was, again, her demeanor at the scene. The detectives are learning this as they go along. They're at the point of when Lori comes back to the home. They're unaware at this point that she was in the home just earlier that morning when the shooting occurred. So what Detective Ynclan is describing is her opinion of how Lori was acting. And I think we should clarify that Detective Ynclan has been on the force for 25 years. This would not be the first person that she's come across at a homicide scene like
That
this.
lost their loved one.
Right. So she has experience dealing with people. So I'm sure she's dealt with people who, again, have a range of emotions. Everybody deals with grief differently, but this is her perspective, knowing what, she knows about the crime, and again, kind of picking up on how Lori is feeling or not feeling, I guess, is the case of her testimony.
And we'll get to that cross-exam in a little bit, but let's watch Trina Kay's direct exam of Ynclan.
What was her demeanor when you see her in this van?
Pretty much the same as her demeanor before. Not real emotional. She was pretty calm. Didn't seem overly affected.
I think you had used nonchalant previously.
Yeah, it's a good word to describe it.
So how did that notification go down? Were you able to tell her what happened?
So, opened the van. I made contact with her. I think at some point I asked her something to the effect if she would step out of the van to talk to me. And at that point, she said that she already knew because she was there, which was kind of a surprise. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. And at that point, I confirmed with her that he had died and he was deceased, and quickly kind of conferred with my sergeant away that at this point her and Tylee are now witnesses to the event and they need to be interviewed, obviously.
And throughout this testimony, we are seeing portions of the interview. It's about a 55-minute interview between Detective Ynclan and Lori Vallow Daybell. We know that she interviews Tylee as well, and they're put in this nice family advocacy room. And it just shows that Chandler PD wasn't necessarily showing their cards. If they were suspecting Lori, it didn't seem like that at the time. A lot of people will tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, why would you, right? You've already got someone who has claimed to be the shooter. He's already explained, right? We're talking about Alex. He's already said why he shot Charles. I guess if you're a detective, nothing seems out of the norm. You've got two guys in a house. One shoots, kills the other.
It's Arizona. We've seen these stories.
Sure.
Sadly, it happens. Self-defense.
It does happen.
Ending in a shooting.
And I don't know that there would have been anything immediately that would have raised their suspicion, even though we've said that we think that maybe Lori's demeanor would have been a red flag. Again, when you're talking an hour or two after the shooting, I'm not sure that any detective anywhere would have been able to kind of use that as a motive going forward to look at Lori as a suspect.
But now looking back, the 20-minute drive to Chandler PD, the 20-minute drive back to the home, it's very clear to the detective now that Lori was very chatty. She never brought up her husband. She never looked like she was sad. She just looked like it was just another day. And so we've gotten that testimony from her. The jury has seen that is what she was like, that demeanor. But of course, we knew that this was going to come, that in cross-examination, Lori would question anyone who called her too calm for the situation, as she has called other officers calm and described them with the same demeanor. That's her way out, as she thinks. But I don't think the jury, you're the wife.
Yeah.
You're not the detective. That has to be cool.
If you were a juror at this point, would calm be the way to describe Lori in any instance? Would nonchalant be a way to describe Lori in any? I mean, you could say she brushes things off. You can certainly get that impression just based on seeing her in court in the last 2 weeks. But you've already seen Lori get a little riled up with some of these witnesses. So it's a polar opposite a little bit, where she may be calm, she may be not fazed by a lot of things, but she does get a little annoyed and angry. You've seen a little bit of that in court already.
Yeah, you don't know which kind of tone you're going to get in cross-exam. Let's see how she did with Cassandra Ynclan.
What was Lori's demeanor in the car with her brother and you and Moffett?
She was unaffected, not emotional. She The best description I can give is that she chattered the whole way, basically back to the house. Not upset, almost not happy, but just really unaffected by everything that was going on. It was kind of striking.
Is there any acknowledgement about what had happened?
No.
Basically just talking like it was any other day?
That's a good description, yes.
And you talked about my demeanor, right? Being ordinary. Is that what you said?
Being ordinary?
You said ordinary, non-emotional, nonchalant.
Correct.
What's your definition of nonchalant?
Pretty almost detached, just calm, doesn't really matter, kind of not extraordinary.
Do you have a degree in psychology?
I do not.
Do you know what a person should act like if they're in a stressful situation?
So there isn't one way to act. There's just behavior that is striking.
Striking behavior.
Correct.
At some point, we're going to keep asking this question again until we know the answer. After the state rests this case, they're going to get to 21 witnesses, probably by the end of this week. We're going to see what witnesses Lori calls, if she can call anyone, with the whole subpoena issue. But does she testify? Does she just leave it all out there? Benjamin Taylor, criminal defense attorney, said, why not? Throw it up. Go for it.
Well, it'll be interesting if the state. I think one scenario is if the state does rest their case on Thursday. There's no court on Friday. We know they're gone for the weekend. Does Lori spend the weekend thinking one last time whether taking the stand is in her best interest? Does that 3-day lull there give her time to think, all right, the only witness I have is myself, and is that going to help me or hurt me? That could be her only saving grace, because there is a possibility the state rests early one morning, say next Monday. Then Lori has to decide immediately, if she hasn't already, do I take the stand?
She can't lie in the stand, but this would be the first time where she can totally, besides opening statements and saying the evidence will show this and that, but she can script the questions for her counsel to ask and try to flip this on its head and just get one juror to fall for her, one juror to believe in her story. That's all it takes is one. And yes, you open yourself up to cross-examination. That's a whole different beast, because Trina K will be licking her chops. But this is a person that we cannot be surprised at anything, and she's not necessarily predictable. So, who knows? It may happen next week.
And a lot can happen between tomorrow and, say, Thursday when the state rests. We still have several other witnesses. My guess is, by and large, they'll all kind of say the same thing about the scene and about the demeanor of Lori. I guess who knows? I would be shocked if she hasn't already made that decision now. I can't imagine she's going to wait until all these witnesses from the state are brought up to the stand and then decide, all right, is it in my best interest to take my own defense? I mean, I don't know. I think at this point, she hasn't made that decision. She should make it soon. Because, like you said, the questions are going to be very important, and you're going to want to make sure that you have the right questions in there. Otherwise, you're really not helping yourself any, unless the questions are specific. Because, as we said, the best part is going to be the cross-examination.
Yeah, that's what everybody's going to be waiting for. All right, so let's see what Lori Vallow Daybell does, and also a reminder: the judge has told her again, you need to watch your line of questioning, stop testifying through your questions, so maybe just take the stand. We'll see. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching On the Record. We'll see you next time after court.